Here at Titan Medical Center, we provide first-class patient care. And we also do bioidentical hormone replacement therapy for males and females.
We also offer medical weight loss, vitamin and amino acid injectable therapies, and rejuvenation detox.
Along with those libido enhancers, you know you want to pleasure your partner, right? So if you want to feel better, look better, and perform better,
call us at 727-389-3220 to become part of the Titan Medical family.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, brought to you by Species Nutrition, Cuts Nutrition, and Liquid Sunrays. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. This is your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions on diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros, competitions, rumors, whatever is on your mind, it is all on the table. Last night, Dave posted a video with inside information from Big Ramy contacting Chris Aceto, confirming that he was no longer going to be competing in this 2019 contest calendar. And just about within the last hour or so, he just jumped on an IG live story with somebody else claiming that he was actually going to compete this year. There is nothing wrong with him, that these rumors from yesterday were, quote, false. And then we hear an unconfirmed report from about an hour ago saying that Big Ronnie has parted ways with his coach, Neil Hill. Neil Hill, Dave, what's the latest? He just texted you a short while ago.
Neil Hill told me that's news to him. He hadn't heard that. But then again, Neil Hill hasn't really heard from Ramy recently. So, the whole Ramy thing is really kind of, I don't know. It's sad in a sense because we all love Ramy. We want to see him, win the Olympia, and it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, everyone said, "Oh, this is the next Mr. Olympia," and I don't know. There's just a lot of drama surrounding this guy. We know he's got a shoulder injury. We saw the videos from him a few weeks ago. He didn't look good. He didn't look like he was ready to do anything. And from what I understand, they pushed the show to the very last show before the Olympia that they can qualify at, which is Tampa. Dexter's doing that show. Ramy, it has to beat Dexter. I just think I think that they're pushing Ramy to do something he doesn't want to do. It seemed like yesterday when he texted Chris Aceto, it was very authentic that he just, he wasn't going to be able to do it. The shoulder's bothering him. He just didn't have enough time. And now all of a sudden things have changed. That could be because sponsors called him up, or maybe he got some pressure put on him. I don't think that Ramy wants to compete this year. I think he knows he's not his best. And I quite frankly, when it's all said and done, I don't think we're going to see him on stage. Because if he goes to a show like Tampa and doesn't win, or even comes in worse than second place behind Dexter, that's a disaster. Because number one, he doesn't qualify for the Olympia. Number two, his stock now goes way, way, way down, obviously. So Ramy's got to come in and beat everyone. Otherwise, in everyone else's mind, he's a failure. So I think that's a lot of pressure. And if he's not at 100% mentally and physically, it's a big mistake to do the show.
Hope for the best, but again, when you're talking about Big Ramy, it is always a topic shrouded in mystery. Let's go to the questions. The first two questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question, Dave, in the app, you have some cycles outlined for women, but none of them contain tests. I know you don't like tests for women, but if a 40-year-old woman were to take it, what amount and ester do you think is best? Also, what side effect would you assume would show first in most cases?
I don't know what this whole new, thinking process with the hormone replacement clinics are with putting women on testosterone. I'm just not in favor of it because every single woman that I know that's on testosterone gets side effects. Okay? Now, if you're on low dose, it might take a longer time for the side effects to accumulate. In a woman's body naturally, the way they produce testosterone is via conversion from DHEA. Dihydroepiandrosterone is the adrenal androgen that's produced from the adrenal glands, which are the glands that sit on top of your kidneys. And that's where women produce their testosterone from, because when they produce DHEA, it can convert to testosterone in their body, and their bodies dictate how much of it they convert. When you try to duplicate or add testosterone to a woman's body, they're very sensitive. And some women are very sensitive to hair loss on their head, hair growth on their face, other androgenization. I just don't think it's a safe way to go. If you're gonna replace what the body naturally produces, put them on DHEA. You can go buy that on Amazon.com. It's not illegal. Likewise, if you really want a little bit of a boost, I say give them Anavar. Why wouldn't these HRT clinics give them 10 milligrams or 5 milligrams a day of Anavar? That's going to be side effect free, and they're going to at least get a boost in terms of sex drive. They're going to get a boost in terms of muscle building. They're going to feel, energized. They're going to get a little bit better recovery. That would be a much safer way to go in my mind, and maybe even a little growth hormone, because that's not going to have any androgenic effects. So I'm not in favor of putting women on testosterone. I know some women like it. Of course they do. It's like, who doesn't like to be on an anabolic steroid cycle? You feel great if you're doing it right. The problem is that you can't stay on it all the time because there's side effects associated with it. More so for women than for men, because these are hormones that are not found in high amounts in women's bodies normally. And you got to remember, when a boy just enters puberty and he starts producing higher testosterone levels around the age of 12, they don't go through their manly changes in 6 months. It happens over the course of a number of years. So the longer women are on this testosterone replacement, okay, the more these side effects will accumulate. So just when you start noticing them, it's almost too late because you've already gotten them and you didn't even know they were coming. So I'd be very careful if I were a woman going on some kind of testosterone, even if it's a cream or a pellet. And now the new thing is pellets. They used to use pellets, well, they still use pellets on cows. They shoot these pellets into their ass because the hormone will trickle out over a long period of time. They don't have to dose them that much. But for humans, it's not a good thing. I'll tell you why. Because if you put a pellet in someone and it's too much, you have to wait for that pellet you can't take it out. You got to wait till it runs its course. So that to me is dangerous. If I'm taking some kind of a hormone, I want to be able to regulate how much is going in my body. And if I'm taking too much, I want to be able to back it down. And if I'm not taking enough, I want to be able to increase it. You can't do that with pellets. So I'm not in favor of what's been going on in that sense.
Second question, again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. If got the lactose problem, I guess he means to say if I have the lactose problem or GI problem from something like sugar alcohol, will affect the absorption of food and nutrient. Like you drink 25 grams whey, if you have lactose problems, you will only absorb 15 grams.
I mean, if you take in, something that causes malabsorption because let's say you're taking a protein that has lactose in it, okay? And you can't digest lactose and your body has to ferment it. The bacteria in your colon will ferment it. Yeah, you could malabsorb the protein, especially if you poop in your brains out. Absolutely, you're not going to absorb it. Same thing with sugar alcohols. If you're taking a huge amount of those in some kind of a shake or a protein, food supplement that has this is a sweetener, and it causes almost like a laxative effect on you, which it does to me, you're going to malabsorb that protein because it doesn't have time to stay into your intestinal tract long enough to get absorbed. That's why when I tell people, look, the reason why I produce Isolyze, which is basically the highest yield whey isolate that you can buy, is because the lactose content is virtually zero. So people have full absorption. Not only are they getting more protein per 32 gram serving size, but they're actually absorbing the protein. Okay, if you're taking a protein shake that's a blend that has some whey concentrate and whey isolate, or you're using a whey isolate that's just not a very high yield whey isolate, because they sell low yield and high yield. Once again, all related to cost. And especially now, recently, the whey protein prices have gone up again. So now these companies are going and cheapening down their whey proteins, and they can still put whey isolate on there, but you got to look and see how many grams of protein per 32 gram serving size. Mine's 27.5 grams of protein per serving size. Some of them are 22 grams for 32 gram serving size. what is that extra, the missing protein? Well, it's lactose. It's more than likely, and you don't want that in what you're eating. You're supposed to be a well-refined machine that needs the finest fuels so that you can process those fuels and utilize them to build muscle, repair muscle, restore glycogen. And if you put crap into your body, you get a crappy performance out of it. And that's something I've always preached when I was competing. I always put the best stuff in my body. You spend $3,000 on GH. What's spending an extra $5 or $10 here or there every time you buy a tub of protein to put the best fuel into your body, which is actually the ingredients that is being used to make new muscle tissue. So don't cheap out. You get what you pay for.
A lot of questions lined up here on our Instagram page. If you're not following us on Instagram, our handle is official_RxMuscle. Let's go to Philip Rowe. Do you have experience with colostrum for improving immunity? Then he goes on to ask about cold showers. So colostrum, do you have any experience and your thoughts?
Colostrum is a secretion that comes out of any kind of mammals who produce milk. Okay, mammals when they give birth, they produce milk to feed their babies, including whales and dolphins for that matter. And the first 48 hours of that production is a mucousy secretion known as colostrum, which is basically very rich in growth factors, IGF-1, MGF, a whole bunch of different growth factors are found in there. And they can be orally absorbed in the baby's gut because the baby's gut for the first 48 hours doesn't produce any hydrochloric acid. So the baby's gut it's not working fully the first 48 hours. Therefore, these growth factors can be absorbed through the lining of the gut without having to be worried about them breaking down because they're in an acidic environment. For an adult to consume colostrum, okay, it's not really going to do anything, okay, because your body's going to digest most of those growth factors that are so, vitally important to the newborn baby. It's interesting that, the universe works in such a way that, the baby's gut for 48 hours wouldn't be developed just in time to absorb that colostrum for the first 48 hours. Then after 48 hours, the mother starts producing milk. Okay, so it's an interesting conundrum. So a lot of people figure, well, if I consume pure colostrum, then I can get all these growth factors. Well, you're not absorbing them. And the funny thing is that we all know that protein hormones are species specific. Meaning if you take in cow colostrum, which contains cow IGF-1 and cow MGF, that's not going to really be utilizable even if you could absorb it, okay? You need to have human IGF-1 and human MGF and all the growth factors to go along with that. And that's assuming you can absorb it. So even if, like I said, we can absorb the colostrum that they sell, they're not selling human colostrum, they're selling cow colostrum. And it is what it is. Once again, everyone's always looking for the greatest, best new thing, and colostrum just is. It's been around for so many years, and it'll go through fads. It'll come into fad. Everyone wants to use it, and then they realize it doesn't do anything, and then it goes out of fad for 5 years, and then someone tries to bring it back again because they figure it's a good way to make money. It sounds sexy when you say, "Hey, I'm taking a shake that has IGF-1 in there," right? Unfortunately, if you're not absorbing it or if it's being digested in your intestinal tract, then who cares? It's not even being utilized, but it's in there, right?
Let's go to TJ O'Connor. And obviously we talked about Big Ramy, Antoine Vaillant, also going through this season-ending injuries. He wants to know, what do you think that's behind the recent rash of injuries to well-known bodybuilders going on? Do you think it is a case of bad form and technique, shortened muscle bellies from shortened range of motion, or just simply bad luck freak accidents?
I was, Derek Farnsworth texted me today. I'm sure he's watching the show. Hey, Derek. And he said, he brought this topic up too. He said, I think, Dave, this would be a good iron debate. He said, I'd like to come on and talk about it. And, he believes, and we were just chatting a little bit, and he believes a lot of it's due to the fact that guys are training too hard and too long and too excessively prior to competition, because that's when we're seeing these injuries. The last guy who really was popping biceps and everything like that before a competition was Dorian. And Dorian wasn't doing volume, but he was doing crazy heavy weights. And, when you get close to a show, you don't have to lighten the weights, but you shouldn't be trying to set records in the gym either. I think people get excited, they start doing, pushing harder and harder because they want to get better and better. And then what the biggest mistake they make is they start going to 2-a-day workouts. And they're training twice a day. And now your body can't recover as it is because you're dieting, and now you're doing double the work. your body just, it gives out and things break and tear and all kinds of stuff like that. So you should still be training. I always tell people, train like you do in the off season pre-contest. Maybe a few extra different exercises, but you want to take your 2 days a week off from weights. You don't want to train every single day. You certainly don't want to do 2-a-days in the gym for weight training. If you have to do 2-a-day cardio, different story. That's a low intensity activity. And I think that's why we're seeing these injuries, because people are pushing too hard. Also, guys are trying to make up for what they maybe didn't do in the off season, thinking I'm going to put on some size while I'm getting ready for a show. And of course, that's a terrible strategy as well.
Interesting one here. I don't know if we've ever really touched on this one from One El Balo. I know it's individually specific to your custom clients, but the question is what to eat after prejudging. So if you have a general guideline as far as what you adhere to for your clients.
Yeah, most of my clients, I give them a quarter pounder, double quarter pounder with cheese and fries. I send them to McDonald's after prejudging. For some reason, the greasy, salty, grimy, burger fries meal just seems to have a rejuvenating effect on the physique. I don't know what it is when a physique is a very depleted state and you put that kind of food in, and I'll tell you a story in a minute about what I used to do with it. And then you drink a little bit and then you give yourself like a little bit of diuretic. Your body just sucks that food up and you just look great. I can't tell you why, I don't really know, but I'll tell you this. When I used to go out, I had a little brief period where I was competing, but I would go out on the weekends. I had just gotten divorced, and I maybe do a little drinking the night before, and I wake up in the morning completely flat, depleted, out of my mind. I go to McDonald's. I'm telling you, within an hour after McDonald's, it was like my body just rejuvenated itself. And I think it's got a lot of sodium in there, and I think a lot of bodybuilders don't really eat excessive sodium. But when you're in a very depleted state and you put sodium into your body without excessive drinking, it wakes your body up. And I just always noticed it. From the minute I went to McDonald's for the very first time when I was bodybuilding and I saw all the veins on my arm and I was like, holy mackerel, I don't know what this food is doing to me. But I surmise it has a lot to do with the greasy saltiness of the food. Things that bodybuilders just don't eat on a regular basis.
Let's go to old school, Matt. Does caffeine absorption have any effect with acidity levels in the drink? For example, hot coffee has higher acidity and cold brew coffee has lower acidity. Does this affect the caffeine absorption? I feel like the same caffeine content in cold brew versus hot coffee gets, quote, used better. Is that because it has lower acidity?
I don't think the pH of the coffee has anything to do with how rapidly or how efficiently you absorb the caffeine. I just don't. Warm fluids tend to get absorbed faster. Cold fluids have to be warmed up in the body, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I'm just speculating here. It's probably not. I think that it's pretty much the same whether you drink cold coffee or warm coffee. I've taken when I would diet, I drank a lot of iced coffee, and I'll tell you, I would go to Starbucks and get like those iced Americano shots. They would put like 4 shots in a cup, and they'd add ice and water to it, and I'd throw a few packets of stevia or Splendor in there. Man, I thought I was eating an ice cream sundae. And man, did that thing wake me up. This is, and let's face it, I'm not into excessive, caffeine, but when I would diet, I did use caffeine. There's no way I would have ever been able to go to the gym without it. And that seemed to work well for me, whether I did hot or cold coffee. It didn't seem to matter.
Let's go to Darby O'Hara. So IGF-1 LR3 be used pre-contest for fat loss and to maintain muscle mass? And should it be taken intramuscularly or subcutaneously?
IGF-1 doesn't burn fat. Hate to break it to you guys. Growth hormone burns fat. Growth hormone is a direct fat mobilizer. IGF is what's produced when growth hormone goes to the liver to be degraded. The liver releases IGF-1, which is the growth aspect of the growth. Okay, so IGF-1 is the one that causes the satellite or stem cells to turn into or differentiate into new mature muscle fibers. It doesn't have a fat burning effect, but it does have somewhat of a metabolism boosting effect, and I think that's through the fact that it's increasing protein synthesis, so your body's energy requirements are a little higher. I don't use IGF-1 or recommend it when you're dieting because it does drop blood sugar. That's why it's called insulin-like growth factor. It has an insulin-like effect. It drops blood sugar. You go into the gym and you take IGF-1 and your blood sugar drops, you're not going to feel great. And when you're dieting, you can't go and eat a ton of carbs to make up for that. So I usually recommend you don't use IGF-1 pre-contest. Save it for the off season.
go to the Atomic Beast. Out of Ronnie and Kevin Levrone, who do you think was more genetically gifted at building muscle, and do you think Kevin would have beaten Ronnie had he trained year-round?
I'll just leave you with this. Ronnie Coleman turned pro naturally. Kevin Levrone didn't. So I think Ronnie was a more genetically gifted, although Levrone seemed to be the kind of guy that would recover quicker than anyone else. In other words, he can go from nothing, zero, to getting ready to go to do the Olympia in like 8 weeks. That I've never seen. I've never seen anyone able to bounce back and put that muscle on. That's not to say that he would put additional muscle on. He can get back to where he left off very quickly. Ronnie never took off enough time to even test that theory, but I bet you Ronnie would be that way too. Because this guy was just unbelievable. I think Ronnie had the best genetics of all time in terms of building muscle tissue, strength, resiliency. You know, it was unfortunate he had that one little injury. Aside from that one injury that kind of mushroomed into all the other problems he had, he really didn't get hurt at all in the gym when he was training. That was that one vulnerability he had.
Let's go to Yagesh Nowal. What is the real secret of not hitting a plateau? How come, I know he's a genetic freak, Larry Wheels hits a new PR every now and then, I wonder?
Well, Larry Wheels he cycles his training too. He's not every single time he goes into the gym trying to set a PR. Every time he goes into the gym, it seems like he does some kind of crazy strength feat, but that's just because he's strong. He can do anything on a regular. He doesn't ever have to increase any of his weights ever, and he can plateau from now to the rest of his career. He'll still be stronger than 98% of the people out there. So the guy's just super, I guess you could say, good at lifting weird objects, because you can give this guy a couch and he's going to lift it over his head. He could probably lift a car if you probably got him in the right position under it. He probably squat it up and then press it over his head. He's got freakish strength, and that's all there is to it. So as far as plateauing, though, ask him, how hard is it for you to put muscle size on? Because, look, Larry tried to compete as a bodybuilder, and he wasn't the biggest guy up. It wasn't like he had 35-inch legs. I mean, his legs can definitely use more size. So I'm sure he's plateaued in the muscle building department. He just seems to have unlimited potential in the strength department.
We have a couple of questions about blood pressure. The first one from Booby Bobby Traplord. My doctor won't prescribe anything for blood pressure because he says I'm too young for it, 26 years old. What alternatives would you suggest?
Death? I don't know. I mean, what is your doctor, what do you mean you're too young? I mean, if you have high blood pressure, who cares if you're 22 or you're 52? You got to give someone a blood pressure medication. Why would you want them to accumulate damage to their kidneys, risk possible stroke? I would go find another doctor if I were you, because that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
So then the other one relating to blood pressure from Bandinet's Ivan, is there some synergistic negative effect between gear and blood pressure medications?
No, there really shouldn't be. No, it depends which blood pressure medication you use. If you're using an angiotensin receptor blocker like losartan, or using an ACE inhibitor like ramipril or lisinopril, those seem to be very side effect free. They don't really have any negative interaction with anabolic steroids. If anything, they're kidney protective. Obviously, keeping your blood pressure lower is kidney protective in general, but they open up the vessels of the kidney to help them to filter better as well. So those are good compounds. Some of the beta blockers, could obviously inhibit your workout intensity because they block your heart's ability to beat beyond a certain amount of beats per minute. So that might not be a great blood pressure medication for someone who's seriously bodybuilding. But like I said, the ACE inhibitors and the angiotensin receptor blockers are great. I don't like the calcium channel blockers personally. They do relax the smooth muscle in the blood vessels and allow them to open up and lower blood pressure. But calcium, channels, control, it also controls muscle contraction. So I always worry about the calcium channel blockers in terms of strength in the gym and performance. So try to stick with the ACE inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers as well. Either one of those categories works.
Couple of questions on GHD Strauss 92. At what point is it necessary for someone to incorporate GH? And then Billy G Fit. Any difference between using GH sub-Q versus IM? I hear conflicting information on kick in time, active lifetime, and effectiveness.
Yeah, I always found that GH is easier to do intramuscular, just because you don't get, sometimes some GHs, and this goes for IGF, the IGF question earlier too, I forgot to answer that. intramuscular and subcutaneous are pretty much the same absorption route. You can do any drug that you can do sub-Q, you can do it intramuscular and vice versa. The question is, why would you do one before the other? Usually, in the past, if you're doing a larger volume, you do it intramuscularly. If you're doing a smaller amount of volume, you would do it subcutaneously under the skin. With GH and IGF-1, I just tell people to put it in their shoulder intramuscularly with an insulin pen. I think that's adequate. If you're taking insulin, however, you don't want insulin getting in too fast, so into the bloodstream, or you can get a blood sugar drop. So subcutaneous is a little bit of a better route for insulin, just so that it gives a little time to get into the bloodstream with a little bit more time for your body to kind of get ready for it, in case you do have to eat something or you took too much.
Let's go to, so we have a couple of questions on Iron Rage. One, I can't find who asked it, but well, they said that it's a great idea having Lee Priest on the show. The other one from JMS305, where is John Romano?
John is building a swimming pool. Now, I am building a swimming pool too, but I am not personally building the swimming pool. I am paying someone to build the swimming pool. So therefore, my swimming pool is being done with no effort to me. So I can be here and I can do these shows with you. John Romano is building a swimming pool, but he is actually physically building the swimming pool himself. He's got the digger out there. He's chopping up the cement. He's putting down the new pavers. So he can't be available because he's actually physically working on the pool. Now, John's pool will probably look better than mine because John is very talented, but John will be exhausted after he's done doing the pool. So, and I won't be. I'm only exhausted from my kids. But yeah, John will be back when he's done with the pool, I think, and he starts, because as soon as when you work for someone else and you're doing a job for someone else, you come home after work. When you're doing a job for yourself, you never stop working. I know, I've done this before. You finish the work day's over and you're still out there working because it's for yourself, right? And I think that's the problem. But John said he'll be back. Don't worry about it.
Nathan Dandridge. Dave, do you think nubain was the catalyst behind people training harder in the 90s? Also, did the African-American bodybuilders use nubain as well?
I knew African-American guys who used nubain. Not a lot, but some of them use it. I think nubain wasn't the reason why guys trained harder. Guys just trained harder. They just felt, hey, if I take nubain, I could train even harder. That was one of those things. Because training was so important back then. Nowadays, guys don't train that hard, so they don't even care about nubain. No, I'm just kidding. Guys train hard these days. I just don't think it's nurtured enough. Like, in other words, it was a competition. When I would go to the gym and I had my training partners there and we had 3 or 4 of us, it was like, well, who's going to lift heavier? Who's going to push more? Who's going to get one more rep out? That was the most important thing. That's why training was so traumatic for me. It was like I couldn't even think about wanting to work a job because I had to focus on that workout every single, workout day I had to go to the gym. And on off days, it was like, oh my God, it was like school. It was like school's out for vacation. It was like, I can't believe I got a day off. But then I got to think about my workout tomorrow and how I'm going to outdo my training partner or how I'm going to outdo the workout I did the week before. Because I knew if I did that I was going to grow. And so that was the main focus. Nowadays, it's like, all right, when I get to the gym, all right, I got to film 3 Instagram clips, and I got to send my sponsor a clip, and I got to do a shout out to my friends, and you're not even worried about the workout. You're more worried about, can I get all my social media work done? So I think that's a little distracting. We didn't have those distractions because when I first started actually having a cell phone, this was back in the mid 90s, you didn't even turn on the cell phone because first of all, the battery wouldn't last. Secondly, you had 30 minutes of battery life. And if you received the call when it was on and you really didn't want to call from that person, you got charged anyway. So the phone stayed in the car. You didn't bring the phone with you, and the phone was this big, it was huge. It was like this big flip phone. It looked like something you'd give your kid to play with as a toy. And it's a brave new world, so that's why training was so important back then.
We'll take a couple of more questions. One from Flex Luthor. Dave, hate this show more than yada, yada, yada. Drugs aside, what are the needs to have when running a cycle? And he puts in parentheses, milk thistle, blood pressure monitor, etc.
In an ideal world, if I was, and not everyone's going to do this, and not everyone necessarily needs to, some of the diagnostic testing you can do at home to monitor yourself would be obviously a blood pressure cuff. They make these auto-inflatable ones at CVS, probably about $100. They're probably under $100. They're probably like around $69, $70 now. You could get a blood sugar monitor, which is cheap enough in Walmart. They're like $9, so you can keep track of your blood sugars. I would certainly use some milk thistle. I like to add it. I like milk thistle with N-acetylcysteine in it. I sell a product from Bill Llewellyn on my DavePalumbo.com website, known as Liver Stable. I've been taking it for years. Ever since I started taking that product, I wish I would have taken it I wish it would have been around while I was competing. Ever since I started taking that product, my liver enzymes are always perfect on blood work. Now, I'm also not on any drugs yet, and I'm not training as hard as I used to, but I do believe that's an important component. I sell a product called Kidney Stuff that I also don't make, but I sell it on DavePalumbo.com. And I recommend that people use that if you have high creatinine. If you don't have high creatinine, maybe once a year run a bag of it just to kind of during the 3-week detox that I give out for free to people if they email me at huge285@AOL.com. Once again, I think kidney cleaning or cleansing and liver cleansing, very important, okay, to the body, especially once or twice a year to just give the body the chance to get it out of you. If you're on a cycle though, I would always stay on the Liver Stable product because that's gonna keep those bile ducts open and allow the liver to get rid of all the junk that's in there.
We got a couple of questions about Beatriz Vizcaya. I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. 18-year-old bikini pro who won the Big Men Weekend show a couple of weeks ago. She's from Portugal. So what I'll do is I'll send it to our Muscle in the Morning producer, Corey, and we can feature her on Muscle in.
We already featured her. We reported on her win. I remember saying that. She looked great. I saw the pictures.
So there you go. Romeo Salinasiv, your thoughts on CBD for a recovery supplement?
I can't tell you how many people have contacted me and trying to get me to be the first guy to put CBD. I probably knew about CBD before anyone knew about it because I had a lot of people contacting me and asking me, hey, Dave, you want to put this in your products? We can make it. We have the purest one, blah, 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 blah. And I didn't see the benefit of adding it to every one of my supplements. In other words, CBD would be more of a relaxation type product. Something that will help people who are in pain. So I'm like, I don't think bodybuilders need that on a regular basis. That should be a standalone product. It seems like they're adding CBD to everything now. And I didn't want to just jump on a bandwagon. To be honest with you, I could have put together a product and had one of the first out there. I just don't see a benefit of it. Well, I don't know why you would want to take CBD all day long, Go smoke marijuana all day long. There's no reason for it. I just think it's not what I call a necessity product. It's a luxury item. And if I add that to my products, it's going to increase the cost of my products. And they're high enough already because they're super high end. So I don't think that there's any added benefit to adding CBD other than maybe to take it at night for relaxation, for better sleep quality. If you are in pain because you have injuries, it might help as well. But I don't think it's not going to help with performance, and it's not going to help you put muscle on.
Last question. Let's go to Big Ant 1026. Dave, back in the day, in your prime, bodybuilders ate massive amounts of food. I know you are proof if you eat big, train heavy, you will grow, build muscle. Now, it seems as if people are eating less with lower calories, and they say they're still growing, building muscle. Your thoughts?
Well, I don't see too many 300-plus pound guys that are in pretty decent shape walking around the bodybuilding world these days. There are a couple. And the guys that do eat a lot of food and they train really heavy. So, figure it out. Why were there more in the 90s and late 90s and early 2000s than there are today? Well, maybe people are taking a different approach. And that's fine. If guys want to be more classic physique, they don't really want to put on the amount of mass, then that's okay. But if you want to be a big, freaky bodybuilder, you got to eat big food, okay? You got to train heavy, and you got to rest. And that's the formula for success. And then do it over and over and over and over again, and never stop. Be consistent. Because the only way you can fail is to quit. I say that all the time.
Just wanted to throw this one in here if you want to give a quick short answer. 17 years old, fair muscle mass, been training for almost 4 years, considering taking gear. He wants to know specifically, is there any turning back?
Turning back in what sense? Once you start it?
Once you start, yeah.
It's addicting. Once you start taking anabolics, I can't tell you how many guys said they're going to take one cycle, they told me. And then I just want to recover from this little bit of an injury I have. I'm going to do one. No one does one cycle. Once you do it, you're going to want to keep doing it because you're going to want to keep getting the great results and feel good while you're doing it. That's the addiction. It's not physically addicting. It's mentally addicting. And if you're competing, obviously, it serves a purpose to continue doing it. And that's why you have to say to yourself, all right, what's the game plan? I'm going to compete for 10 years, and then I'm going to stop it. You know, when I stopped competing, I went right to hormone replacement dosages, and then at some point I said to myself, I don't need to be this big. Why am I even on HRT? Let me see what I feel like. I went try to get my wife pregnant. I did. My levels were pretty high. They were over 500. I'm like, I'm just going to stay, clean. I don't need it anymore. If my levels were to dip down under, 250 and I wasn't feeling good, I would absolutely go back on HRT. I would call TitanMedicalCenter.com up. I'd be like, Sharice, John, let's get me back on the testosterone program. But I don't need to do that right now because my levels are good. So I'll do other things. I do their injectable glutathione. I take a shot of HCG every once in a while just to keep everything, moving pretty good. And I feel great. So you got to go by you can't just knee jerk say, all right, I have to do this because everyone else is doing it. You got to go by blood work and how you feel.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, brought to you by Cuts Fitness, Species Nutrition, and Liquid Sun Rays. For our producer, Tyler Shore and Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.